been sorted, and we've got to say a lot of time and effort. The example before us is the port company, which has operated very successfully. It's a major business. It's had no council directors on it for years and years. I agree that this is such an important issue that it should have some input from councils, and I think when this thing first came up, we should have put the alternative directors on because they've got the expertise, and we should have either had one council director, either probably ex officio, to keep an eye on it and to report back, because it is such an important thing. So I think it's cowardly is not the word. We should be acting now to reassure the community, because we have, as I say, dithered for months and months on this issue. So I think we should, I disagree in the sense, I think we put the alternate directors on and appoint one councillor right now, either ex officio or as a voting director, and signal to the community that we are capable of making a decision on something we've stuffed around for 6 months. To kick it, to put it forward is fine, it's workable, it'll be okay, but it certainly doesn't show that we're showing positive leadership. So in a sense, I agree with the concept, I don't agree with the timing, so I will vote against it.
Other speakers. Councillor Scott.
Mr Chairman, I'm not uncomfortable with the amendment, but I am going to speak against it, because I think that the recommendation to me should be that going forward, past the time when the Ruataniwha water storage project sits within this holding company, and that should be, should it proceed, that would be by sometime early next year. If not, if it's not going to proceed, it won't be there either. That we consider what the holding company is, what its direction is, why it's there, and what its needs are, and appoint then the appropriate number of councillors. So, I'd be happy to see a recommendation that the new council considers the appropriate number of directors, but I think going a step too far, telling them that they should only have one, I think it should be up to the new council to consider what are the holding company's needs in the future, because 3 years is going to be the future of this holding company. It's not going to be the Ruataniwha Water Storage Company, which will, should it proceed, be in a general partnership of its own. So I appreciate the sentiments behind this. I certainly endorse the need for the new council to review it, but I don't think directing them as to the number is the appropriate measure at this stage.
Councillor Curtin.
Well, Mr Chair, I don't appreciate the sentiment at all. I find the logic vague, spurious and foolish. Why on earth would you decide, for some reason, which in the vagueness of this, to have only one councillor around the table? Why not none, if there's some imperative that we need to consider? It's just foolish. Get in the game, do our job. It's a holding company. It's about defining the future, which the council is intimately involved in. It's not the Port of Napier, whose function and direction is very clear, and it's not an integral part of council. We could move away from having the port tomorrow, other than the financial impact in terms of direction and outputs of the council. It would not have that influence. But what we're talking about is a vital piece of governance and infrastructure for the council to proceed forward into the future with its key governance requirement. I see no point whatsoever in making a recommendation to an incoming council that structure be reduced in terms of councillor representation to one, thereby limiting, diluting and polluting the very purpose on which that representation is there. The influence that needs to be there, and this mover and seconder referred to influence and input. They know full well that a board configuration with the strong-minded, as Councillor Dick has pointed out, strong-minded and very capable and influential people on that board, non-elected, but without the perspective, the elected perspective that's needed, and also I would suggest without the history and philosophy of the council in terms of its environmental outputs being represented around the table. Yes, they are commercial directors. They have a very commercial focus. sometimes those commercial, the focus of that commercial activity conflicts with the overarching environmental outputs that we are wanting to deliver. I see no point whatsoever in making a recommendation to an incumbent council that this council dilute its influence on key outputs for HBRIC.
Other speakers, Councillor Dick.
Mr. Chairman, a new council is only 6 weeks away. Half of the faces around this table then may be new faces. This resolution effectively disenfranchises them. I can't support it.
Councillor McGregor.
I'm going to vote against this resolution. I believe the new council, which is so close to being elected, should start off with a fresh start. I believe it has all the ability in the world it will have to make a decision on the facts of the place after it's debated the issue.
Councillor Bremerswell.
Yeah, I don't support this recommendation as it stands, along with the reasons being given by other colleagues.
Chairman, can I just ask for the amendment to be read first?
That council recommends to the incoming council that the number of councillor directors on the HBRIC board of directors be reduced to 1.
Mr. Chairman, I think some of the last comments just suggest that we're trying to move it to 1 right now. That's not the case. It's recommending to the incoming council, who can do whatever they like with the recommendation, including toss it out the window. So folk who have said that it's not, it's going to reduce or dilute or has some certainty about it, it isn't. It's simply recommending something. Can I just address some of the comments made about the need to have councillors involved in HBRIC? Auckland City, for the bulk of Auckland's operations, which were traditionally councils, are run by commercial boards by statute, such as water, such as the tourism and so on. There aren't councillors involved in those. Dunedin was mentioned earlier, the Larson report. Dunedin's holding company is completely run by corporates and have been now for some time. And the only councillor that was in Dunedin for a very long time, Councillor Paul Hudson, used to be the CEO of Cadbury's, who'd get there in his own right. In fact, if his councillor is irrelevant. He was there really as a commercial one. What we're saying here is, and one of the things that worries me about some of the comments I've just heard about what the dam is, lead me to understand why some members of the public are confused. And I think we've got to be very conscious that the dam is simply another commercial entity being developed with a business case. There's consents obtained for the business, there's other developments done for the business, there's clients to be derived, there's a design and construction to be costed. When all of those come together, you take a business decision to recommend to the shareholder. That is all it is. And so councillor directors, however hard they're working, and I don't deny that, are simply there as other people working in there. Being a councillor might give another perspective, but I don't actually think it makes a jot of difference to that final business decision, because the final decision sits still back at this table with the new council. So the view is that this is simply saying we recommend to the incoming council that we actually resolve some of the issues about conflict perception or real, some of the issues about connection, and that's really all this is trying to do at this stage. So that's what the amendment's trying to do. We'll see how it goes.
Thank you. Okay, all those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Failed, unless you wish to see a show of hands. I think it was a resounding no. So the amendment lapses or fails. So we go back to the original motion. Anyone who hasn't spoken to that, I think the only one was Councillor Rem as well. You don't have to. But.
Yeah, no, Mr. Chair, this isn't my first preference, which would be for 21, which I mentioned earlier, which would be abstention of councillor directors at council meetings when the dam is discussed. And However, I'm happy with this recommendation because it still leaves an opening for that to happen, and it means that the incoming council can again go back and address these concerns. And I know there's a lot of public interest in this. This is quite a polarising and difficult issue, but I'm comfortable to support this at this stage, although it's not my first option.
Councillor McGregor.
Briefly, Mr. Chairman, I thank those that are responsible for this paper. They've laid out all the issues, all the alternatives, and appreciate that. I'm strongly in favour of the status quo. Recall saying so when we debated it previously. Nothing's changed my mind. I believe we've got the balance about right, and with us being on the threshold of a new council, I think the status quo is the only way to go. But I would say, in conclusion, I would express my appreciation for the amount of time and hard work that our three councillors on the investment company have put in. I know they've put in a huge amount of work, and I'd like to thank them for it.
Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do support the recommendation in its current form. However, as I said previously, have a lot of sympathy for the position that was taken by Councillor Douglas. I think that, without spelling it out, I hope the staff take on board when they are preparing a paper around this for the new council, that at some time a review of the number of councillors in the Constitution should be on the agenda, because that sets the direction for the next 3 years, and within a very short place of time it should return to being what was set up to be, a holding company. And we need to take into account the consultations that we have had on setting up that holding company and the expectations of the public and the role of councillors on that. I also hope the staff take into account some timetables to assist the incoming council in deciding on a recommendation. What are the trigger points that might preclude councillors from making a decision around the council table? And I believe that this council needs everybody, all 9 people here, ultimately to be making that decision. So if there are trigger points, they need to be identified, and some sort of timetable for handling those be set in place. So the whole thing can be done with transparency and with keeping the whole system acting with integrity rather than a reaction to. So looking forward and managing this is what I would hope. But I don't think at this stage that I can sit here and say the new council should do this or that. So I'm very happy it goes through as a recommendation. I'm sure the staff have heard the opinions, and I'm sure that all of those will be taken into account when they prepare papers for the new council on this role.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, in my opinion, this council has run around like headless chickens, failing to make a decision, and now we're using as an excuse we have to kick this forward to the next council. I think that's a feeble excuse, and I think we should be embarrassed by that. I said it all, the port companies run quite happily for years and years without council representations. I repeat that this is so important that we should have possibly an ex officio director, probably yourself, on it. But yeah, it's about our failure to make a decision 6 months ago.
Tim spoke. I said probably all I wanted to say really when we discussed the amendment. I'm very supportive of this recommendation. I just really want to support Councillor Scott's comments around a timetable or an iteration of where we go over the next few months. I think that would be extremely helpful, not only to staff, but it would be very helpful to incoming councillors. So I just really want to support that.
Thank you. Let's complete the round. Councillor Douglas, are you wishing to add any further? Mr Mohi, Councillor Curtin, you wish to sum up?
Very briefly, Mr Chair, I will sum up and pick up on a couple of points. Firstly, Councillor McGregor referred to the performance of our current representative directors on there, and I'd like to echo those views that our 3 councillor directors have done a superb job in maintaining and retaining and representing the council position on the HBRIC. I think if they reflect on their involvement on that time, and if they were to make a call as to whether they were 1 or 3, I'm sure I'm pretty sure they'd say, in order to keep the momentum going on and retain the council perspective on this, at least 3 should be there. I make this other comment, Mr. Chair, that this is not just another commercial business transaction. This is an integral part of the council's direction of travel. It is imperative that those councillors be there, and if I had a recommendation for the incoming council, it would be to retain that involvement. There are examples, and have been examples over the short life of HBRIC so far, where those commercial directors, with their tightly focused commercial perspective and other idiosyncrasies of being a director, have led and contributed to confusion by the public around this. And I'd suggest that without the involvement of the 3 councillors involved, the intricacies of council activity, representation of the environmental concerns and bigger council concerns would not have been inputted. So I'm grateful that they have been there and have done a good job in making those representations. Mr. Chair, we'll certainly leave it up to the incoming council to reconsider this, but my recommendation is that they pursue and keep moving forward with the project under the current stewardship, and are not deterred by representations which, quite frankly, defy belief in terms of the facts in front of the public at the present time. So my final comment, Mr. Chair, is that I hope and recommend to the incoming council that it stays firm and resolute in pursuing the project and getting to a point where a decision can be made with all the facts in front of it, that the business case is well put, and that the best decision for the future of Hawke's Bay is made. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'll put that motion in. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Thank you. Let's break for morning tea. Thank you, everyone. And 10 minutes. If we could be back at 22, please.